Welcome to the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, John Martin Keith. Celebrities, working class musicians, and people who work behind the scenes in all areas of the music industry will share their stories, encourage you, and give practical advice of ways you can make a living doing what you love in the music industry. This episode is brought to you by Edenbrook Productions. Edenbrook Productions is the company I founded to help musicians grow in their craft. Are you a songwriter, but maybe you've been told your songs aren't quite there yet? Or are your songs ready, but you don't feel stage ready? Or maybe music is your passion, but you feel imprisoned by your day job and you don't know what to do next to make your dream a reality? Well, Edenbrook Productions is here to help. We offer consulting services via phone call, Skype, and FaceTime. And for the You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry podcast listeners, we're offering an introductory 1-hour consultation special. Click on the link in the show notes to contact me, and let's get you making a living in the music industry. Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. I am super excited to introduce you to my friend Jared Ribble. Jared and I have known each other for 20 years now. He is one of my best friends, and he is one of my favorite musicians. He is an incredible drummer. He has toured all over the world. He works with all different kinds of musicians, all different types of bands and artists that he works with. He is a studio engineer. He owns his own studio. He has played on multiple TV shows and has just got a lot of experience and knowledge when it comes to music in general and working within the music industry. So I'm excited for you to hear his story and to hear just kind of our history of knowing each other and how we've worked together throughout music in our lifetime. He's played drums for me multiple times. He's tracked on most of my albums, and I'm just excited for you to hear his story. So sit back, relax, and get ready to take lots of great notes. All right, I am here hanging out with one of my best friends.
Whoa.
Yes, Jared Ribble. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Super honored and excited to be here. Getting to talk with you.
Thank you. Yeah, man, you are one of my best friends
thanks for that.
19 and a half years now.
It's been, yeah.
But you and I have known each other. Since I moved to Nashville, you're one of the first people I met here in town, and had the amazing privilege of being friends with you and touring with you and recording with you and just making music and doing life together. It's been awesome.
We've made a lot of music together. It's been good.
Yeah. So you and I have, just for the audience to know, so I moved here in 2000, in summer of 2000, and you and I met maybe within a month of that, I think. And then we're shortly after that, we're out touring together, playing for another artist. You were playing drums, and I was playing guitar and backup singing and whatever. And so that's how we initially met.
Yeah. Traveling around in a van and a trailer.
Just some guys that barely knew each other were out on the road. And
yeah, but there's nothing like a van and a trailer and long drives for a group of guys or gals, whatever, to really dive into each other's lives, learn a lot about each other and become really, really great friends.
Yeah.
I mean, you're traveling around, you're in the trenches with each other.
Yeah.
You're changing flat tires together. You're loading in gear together. You're, sleeping on somebody's floor, somebody's a random apartment.
Lots of couches and lots of floors that we have done. Yeah. Man, that's good times.
Yeah. I don't ever really want to go back to that type of touring.
Right.
But
it's good for a season.
It's good for a season when you're young and your back is healthy, and I look back really fondly on those times. We were at 9/11 together. We spent that day, 9/11 together.
September 11th, 2001. Yep. So when for people who are like, what does that mean for whatever reason, if you don't know what that means, for the terrorist attacks in New York City on the Trade Center. Yeah, you and I were actually out on tour together playing for another artist.
People always ask me, where were you at 9/11?
And I remember
I was with Marty Keith at a McDonald's.
At a McDonald's just outside of Nashville, heading to South Carolina to Myrtle Beach to play a show at a college. And we stopped at McDonald's. They happened to have a TV in there, and we're ordering. We happened to turn around and look at the TV, and one of the trade centers was on, smoke was coming up, it was on fire, and everybody was freaking out. And that was before the towers fell.
Right. I don't remember if we were in the McDonald's watching the towers fall. I'm not sure.
We saw everything was on fire and that the smoke was coming up. And then once we got back on the road, we turned the radio on and listened to it pretty much the whole day,
Right.
the whole trip, and we
Yeah.
just sat in silence and just listened.
Yeah.
But that sure was
Yep. So
Yep.
random
random
thought,
thing, but
every time someone says, "Where were you at 9/11?" I think of you,
Yep.
and I think of that time.
same with me. As I was Jared Ribble and at a McDonald's just outside of Nashville. That's exactly right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Wow, a lot of history together.
Yep.
So,
Made some records together. It's been good.
yeah. So for people to know, Jared is one of my drummers that on my recordings, the albums that I've put out over the years. You've played drums on recordings with me and have engineered a lot of those projects, and we've worked on other projects together. And so we can talk more about that a little bit later on. But I want to go back and briefly talk about your history and where you're from and how you got into music to begin with.
Sure. I was born with wanting to be a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the time I was 2 years old, I was banging on pots and pans. I remember vividly my parents we'd go to the downtown Christmas parades and that sort of thing, and I'd always want to watch the drum line. We'd go to high school football games, and I didn't care about the football at the time. I cared about where are the drummers. So my parents knew that I just had something within me that was going to be a drummer. And it also helped that my dad was, I call it, he's a hobbyist concert promoter. So where I was from, Neenah, Wisconsin, up northeast part of Wisconsin, tours did not come through there.
Yeah.
And my dad and we were heavily into gospel music and contemporary Christian music. So my dad would bring whatever the hot act was at the time. He would promote the concert up in our area. So I was around these shows all the time, and drummers, the drummer in the band, and I'd just key in on that guy. And so my parents knew that I wanted to be a drummer. Of course, they put me in piano lessons first, which, that's neither here nor there. But very quickly, when I was 9, they got me into drum lessons, and it just kind of took off from there. Mm-hmm. Now, the funny story, though, is my first band director in 7th grade, he did ask my parents, is Jared good at anything else? Because he'll never really be a drummer.
Really?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I had been taking drum set lessons for several years. I had never played concert bass drum or timpani or bells or anything like that. I had no interest.
That's a different
whole different thing. Percussive arts is different than just drum set.
Yeah.
So I do kind of remember that story. But to this band director's credit, though, after my parents said, "Well, have you tried him on drum set?" and the band director was like, "Well, we don't have 7th grade band literature that has drum set." This old crotchety band director did go out and find some literature that had drum set, and he did feature me playing drum set.
Okay.
So to his credit, it was really cool. But it did help kind of hook me, because otherwise I probably would have lost interest in playing bells and timpani and whatever.
Yeah.
But so I'm appreciative that he did that, even though it's kind of a fun story to say he didn't think that I'd ever be a drummer.
Yeah. But that's cool that your parents knew something about you that he didn't, and encouraged him to say, okay, let's focus the attention this direction.
Yeah.
Into something that you did know that you could incorporate into what they were doing already.
Right.
And that allows you to shine. All of a sudden, that gives you a platform.
Right. Because if he hadn't listened to my parents and at least found some literature that had some drum set in it, I probably would have bailed. And all the music education I would have lost because I never would have picked up band again. Mm-hmm. It would have been a travesty, really. Because, yes, I did need to learn timpani and bells and all that other stuff to become a better, more well-rounded musician. And I probably never would have had that opportunity, or I would have quit on that opportunity because I wouldn't have gotten it.
Right. So I'm curious real quick, just because you're talking about when your dad was promoting concerts and bringing in these bands and artists, and you were locking in on the drummer, how old were you kind of that time frame?
3, 4, 5.
Okay. So
the problem is that I hated loud noise. I hated loud sounds.
Yeah.
So I'd want to see the drummer, and my dad would actually take me backstage or up on a catwalk, so I could see the drummer, but it would be so loud that it would drive me nuts. So it was this weird push and pull with me. I remember even as a little kid, I want to see the drums, but it's too loud,
Yeah. So did you ever get to actually meet any of those drummers? Like, would he take you up to them and say, "Hey, this is my son Jared. He loves drums."
Yeah.
And they kind of encourage you in
Yeah,
with anything?
certainly on occasion, and not everybody he brought used drums. So, but I remember vividly in high school there was this super hot. They were just at the top of their game, hot act called DC Talk,
Yep.
and their drummer, of course, so many people know him. His name is Will Denton.
Yep.
At the time. And Will, if you were to go around Nashville, all the guys that are, 40, 35, 40 years old, all the drummers, you would find probably 50 drummers that Will took under his wing as he was out on tour with DC Talk and Stephen Curtis Chapman. And I was one of them, So after the show, my dad just said, "Hey, can my son come say hi?" And of course Will's like, yeah. And he talked to me for 30 minutes, which just blew my mind. But even more than that, so then Will left DC Talk and went to Stephen Curtis Chapman the year later. And my dad, this is before emails, this is before cell phones, my dad gets a phone call from Will, and Will said, "Hey, I'm going to be passing through town with Stephen Curtis. Is Jared around? I'd love to just hang with him."
Nice.
And my parents graciously let me out of school, and I hung with Will the whole day. We came over to my house. We played drums the entire day. I mean, so that's one of my great stories of a guy that, just bent over backwards to encourage this high school kid.
Yeah. That's invaluable.
Yeah, he didn't have to. And then of course I go out and I've become a professional. I'm out on tour, and I tried to pay it forward to a point, but that's hard.
Yeah.
When you're on the road every day, you're tired, you're exhausted. Now he had a day off, but even then, if I have a day off on the road, I'm sleeping in, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing a whole tons of stuff. And that he would do that for me, it was really awesome. And not just me, he's done that for, I'd say 50 or more, high school kids.
That's cool. I mean, that's great. I think that's encouraging to know that, and for audience to know, if you're a musician and you're doing this for a living to any level, and if you can incorporate what you know and what your passion is, and you can infuse that into someone else that's watching you, that says, "Hey, I want to do this, and I like what you're doing," whether it's teaching somebody. I'm a guitar teacher, so I teach students, and so I get to do it that way. But just to know that, if you can go hang out with somebody and just encourage them, whether it be talking with them or playing some music with them or whatever, man, that goes a long way.
Oh yeah.
If people did that with me, like Stephen Curtis would come, because everybody knows by now that, we're from the same hometown. His dad was my guitar teacher, and I've known them most of my life. So, and you and I are close to the same age. So whenever Stephen Curtis would come back to Paducah at the time when I was in high school or early college age, and he would come in to visit and go to his dad's music store, and I was there and I was working for his dad at the time, that was huge for me, because he would sit down with me and let me play one of my songs for him.
Right.
Just to encourage me and give me feedback. And that was invaluable. Not one because he is my favorite artist, but he's also a friend, and but just to have that dynamic of someone who's willing to, that you look up to so highly and regard them in such high esteem for who they are, what they do, and they're willing to give that back to you and to encourage you is invaluable,
Yeah. So the two lessons here: one, be that to somebody,
right.
As a musician, encourage the younger generation, encourage other people around you. But the other lesson for a high school kid or a junior high kid who wants to be a professional musician or is thinking about it, reach out to one of your heroes.
Yeah.
Now with all social media, it's so easy to connect with people. It doesn't mean that everyone you reach out to, your drumming hero in my case, that they might respond. They might not respond, and you got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
But I would say 7 times out of 10, they probably will.
Especially nowadays with social media.
It's
and
too
everything.
easy.
Yeah.
It's too easy to do it.
It's changed everything.
So whoever your hero is, I would not be afraid to reach out to him and say, "Hey, I want to do what you're doing. How did you, and interview him, ask him, talk to him." Yep. Because for the most part, we all enjoy talking about what we do.
Right.
Because I love playing drums, so I'm passionate about it. I want to talk about it, and I enjoy helping other people.
Yeah.
So the two lessons there: help other people, but don't be afraid to reach out. It's just really easy these days.
Yeah, yeah. Let's continue on. So you're in in Wisconsin. Now, you're from the Appleton, Wisconsin area,
Yeah.
and Oshkosh, that sort of that area. So another guy that I've had on the show recently, his name's John Doherty, and you know John.
Oh yeah, I know
He's
John.
director of Life Fest,
Yep.
and he was in town not too long ago, and so we got to get together and visit. Haven't seen each other for forever, so we got to talk about Life Fest, and I think we talked about you a little bit, and just the fact that you guys knew each other, and at least off the record, we were talking, just discussing, that history of knowing each other, and
Sure.
just knowing each other, knowing people from different areas and having that connection with people that you can kind of circle back to years later,
Right.
and have opportunities, because you've played at Life Fest, at his festival, many times with
Oh, yeah.
different bands that you've been a part of, and
Played there. I've spoken there. Yeah, I've been. But there's a unique history there too. Is that my dad was a board member for Life Promotions, who owned that festival
Right.
and whatnot. So he was on the board. My mom used to work that festival, just I think as a volunteer. She was actually the person sitting in the trailer that would pay the bands.
yep, she paid me one time.
Right. Right.
When I got to play there.
Yeah, so it was, she has stories, and I'm not going to share them. They're her stories, but she has stories of the managers, because that's who she's dealing with.
Right.
The manager comes in to get their paycheck.
Yeah.
And so she's got her stories of what managers she likes, what managers she doesn't, that sort of
That's
thing.
interesting. I need to have her on the show.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean,
I'm just kidding.
you couldn't call out somebody.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
just kidding. I'm not going to do that.
So from that standpoint, it's kind of cool. Again, I credit my parents and my dad for getting me going, because he owned a roofing company. All right, he was not in the music industry, but he had a passion for it, and so he volunteered his time in that area because he knew it was good for the community. So he would, like I said, he'd bring in artists that he wanted to see, that he knew would be good for the community. And then because he's doing that, Life Promotion says, man, you need to be a board member of what we're doing here, because your passion lines up with what we're doing. And so it's all volunteer. There's a nugget of goodness in there that someone wants to pull out, hey, if, volunteer where you're passionate,
Yeah.
it changes people's lives.
Sure.
So
what brought you to Nashville?
yeah, so going back to these bands coming through town, whether it was Life Fest or whether it was just my dad promoting a show, my brother and myself. My brother's 2 years older. He was a keyboard player, music synthesis guy, and I was a drummer. So we would just start asking the musicians on stage, hey, if we want to do what you're doing, what should we do? And almost to a T, they said, go to Berklee College of Music in Boston or go to Belmont in Nashville. So my brother went to Berklee. I did some summer studies programs up there in high school, and I loved the school. I thought it was great, but it just wasn't for me. I knew that this is great for the summer, but this is not great for 4 years for me. Great school,
Yep.
not, it's different strokes for different folks. But we came and visited Belmont, and there was just something about Nashville. There was something about that school. We happened to be visiting on the day that the Belmont Big Band was performing, and we came to that concert, and I was blown away. And from that moment on, I knew that I had to be the drummer in the Belmont Big Band.
Okay.
So I applied. I had terrible SAT or ACT scores, so I got in, but barely. I got in on academic probation and whatever, but they let me in.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
At least you're in.
Yeah, and I came to Belmont, and for me, my professional tree, I call it my career tree, my professional tree, and how I got from this gig to this gig to that gig to play on this session to this TV show, the tree all goes back to Belmont.
Okay.
So, and then beyond that, it goes to my parents helping me get there and all that. But my professional tree, the roots are at Belmont. Okay. And I love that school. I'm very proud of that school. It is not the only way to do it. You can certainly become a professional without going to college. But for me, that's where it all started.
Okay.
And to a large degree, it started with the Belmont Big Band. Because, Marty, you have to audition to get into that big band. And
right.
I auditioned every semester, 8 semesters, to get into that big band. And would you believe that I never once was able to get that chair?
Never, ever.
Never, ever once.
Okay. No, that's for me. That's hard to believe because I know you as a drummer,
Sure.
and you're one of the best drummers that I know, and I know lots of amazing drummers.
And there are amazing drummers out there. And the particular years that I was at Belmont, there were some other drummers that just happened to be better at that or better than me. What, it doesn't matter. Now, I had tons of playing. I mean, if you go to Belmont for music, you will be playing so much music for recitals and for all these ensembles and, extracurricular stuff. So it's not like you're not going to have the chance. But I specifically went to Belmont to get into that band.
I never did.
And never could do it. Now, I played percussion in that band. So, we had the drummer, but then there was percussion players. And so I was always able to play percussion in the band, but that's not the chair that I wanted.
Now, pause for a second.
Yeah.
Go back to high school, and the music director at high school is saying, "Are we sure that this is what Jared's good at? Because he's wanting you to do stuff that you're not doing stuff that he's wanting you to do.
Sure.
You're not good at the time. We're like, maybe is there something else that Jared could do because he's not great at this, and now you're doing this very thing at Belmont."
Right. I want to back up. It wasn't high school. It was 7th grade.
Okay.
7th grade is pretty young. Middle school.
Yeah.
So we, not to get deep in the weeds on the story, but we ended up moving school districts, ended up at a different school district, which actually had much better music programs. And my 8th grade band director, so 1 year difference, different city, different director, different school, asked me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said something other than play drums. And she looked at me and said, "You are nuts. Do you have any idea how much opportunity there is for you to be a professional drummer?" And she taught me all these different opportunities. And from that point on, 8th grade, I had my sights set on becoming a pro.
Okay.
And, then go through high school and just, really went at it. And was a big fish in a small pond, moved to Nashville, go to Belmont, much smaller fish in an
ocean.
In an ocean, or at least bigger pond.
Yeah.
But I had my sights set on the Belmont Big Band.
Okay.
And all I could ever manage was to play percussion in that band.
Now, what does that do for you mentally? And I don't say your ego, but just because this is the reason that you're here.
Oh,
that's your whole thing, and you don't get it. Like, what is that? How does that affect you wanting to do it professionally, or did it?
It didn't affect me wanting to do it professionally.
Okay.
The only reason why I wanted to be the drummer for the Belmont Big Band, the only reason, it's not because I love big band music. That is in part the problem. It's not that I loved big band music, it's because that drummer was deemed the best drummer on campus. So really what it was is I wanted to play in the Belmont Big Band so I could wear the banner of he must be the best drummer on Belmont's campus. But you see where there's a problem there, is that I wasn't passionate about that style of music. So why would and how could I ever be the right drummer for that? I'm going to say job. It's not a job. It's an ensemble. Why would I be the right drummer for that ensemble if I'm not passionate about that music?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. I didn't get it at the time. I just wanted to be the best.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about my story...
I'm shaking my head and
because you know where this is going.
I know where this is going.
So you know where this is going. Is that so? I'm spending 4 years, 8 semesters in college, working on my big band chops.
Okay.
Never can get to that chair, but I made all these friends in the Belmont Big Band because I was playing percussion.
Okay.
And there was the lead trumpet player. During my time there, his name was Denver Bierman.
Okay. Oh, he was at school with you.
He was at school with me. He was the lead trumpet player in Belmont's Big Band.
Okay.
So Denver, it's his name, Denver. He's not from Denver. He's from Indiana, but his name is Denver. And so he is doing arranging for the Belmont Big Band. He's writing, and he even starts his own little big band. I was not the drummer for it when he started it, one of his best friends from high school was. But I knew Denver, and I knew all these guys that were in his band because we were all in the big band together. Well, the drum spot for that for his band, Denver and the Mile High Orchestra.
Yep.
That's the name of this band. It's a funny, fun-loving, silly little Christian big band.
Yep.
Okay. So these guys start going out on the road and doing little shows and whatever, and their drummer leaves. And so Denver, I'm in my senior year now. He comes to me and he's like, "Hey man, I need a drummer. Would you be willing to come play with me?" And I said, big band's not really my thing. So I'll play for you until you find the right guy. And I kid you not, that was August of 2000. It's 2019, and I'm doing Christmas shows with Denver 19 years later.
Yep.
19 years later,
Yeah.
I've been playing for him all these years.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to. So what's so funny, I was never passionate about big band music. I had been studying big band music to try to get into the big band Belmont ensemble for 8 semesters. Never was able to get to that chair, but I was being prepared professionally for something else.
Yep.
So that's sort of the cool story. I was so mad and so irritated, and I get so frustrated that I could never get to that spot in college. But there was a bigger purpose. I don't know, I'm a man of faith. I do believe that God can, lead your path through life. And that was just one of those things where I think God was setting me up
Sure.
for my professional life. And then through Denver's band, that's the route or the career tree that led to certain TV shows, that led to all the TV shows. I've appeared over 50 times on major television networks, and it all stemmed from Belmont's big band that I never was able to play in.
But Denver saw something in you.
Yeah.
And invited you to come be a part of it, and so that opened up a whole thing for you.
And what was really kind of cool looking back, because I was never I never had a traditional big band sound to my playing. So I brought this unique twist, unique
like a pop
edge.
twist.
Yeah, a pop rock twist to big band. Now I can swing. Like I know where a swing is supposed to be.
Right.
But then to add this sort of pop rock element to it, funky element to it, because I was with him during those early days, I helped create a sound. Right. So his sound comes from his writing, his voice, the lead trumpet player, and the drums. So between those 3 things, it is Denver sound.
Right.
Now, sadly anymore, I can't do all the shows, so it can be tough for him to find a drummer. And guys old time guys that are still in his band call me up. It's like, man, it's just not the same. You're not here. It's like, of course it's not going to be the same.
Right.
Because I have a unique thing that is uniquely me.
Right.
So I get to hang my hat on that, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's cool. And I think that's important for listeners to know. Everybody has their own voice.
Right.
In what you do. No matter who's playing for who, if someone hires me, I'm going to bring something a little different than the next guy that plays guitar.
Right.
We may be equally as good as one another. I might be better than him. He might be a little better than me. Even if we can both pull off the exact same job, we're both doing the same thing and accomplishing the same goal. We're going to do it a slightly different way just because of our stylistic choices are a little different or whatever. And that's neither necessarily good or bad. It's just different. So, but it's important for people to know it's okay to have your own style.
Right.
You're going to bring something unique to the table that no one else is going to bring.
Yep.
And so make that a staple of who you are and what you're about, is that you've got something unique to bring to whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's an ensemble group, you're playing for someone else, you're a solo artist or whatever. Because I think it's easy to get lost. Like I said, you're a big fish in a small pond from where you're from, but you come to a big major music city and you're a small fish in an ocean of other players that are just phenomenal. Well, you didn't get the ultimate thing that you were hoping for at that time, but you brought something unique to someone else that built their career.
Right.
You helped build a career for you and for Denver and all the people playing for him, that created this sound and this style that was uniquely you guys, and that wouldn't have happened the same way if it would have been someone else that he had hired instead of you.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah. So yeah, the nugget here is dive into what makes you unique.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a high school kid, even a college kid, I couldn't have told you what made me unique in college. I
Sure.
was still just learning styles. I was learning how to read charts. I was still learning so much, but as soon as you can start identifying what makes you a unique musician, the fingerprints on your hand, it's as that is a part of your musicianship, the uniqueness. So as soon as you can figure that out and dive into it and go for it, do it and own it. And what's great about that is when you understand what makes you unique, you get less offended when you don't get a job.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go and audition and they don't choose you,
Yeah.
or when you are doing a job and maybe you've been working for a particular artist for a year or two and they let you go. The big old fired. I got fired from this gig. Well, maybe it's because someone else has the uniqueness that they're looking for, and what makes you special is not what's helping them.
Right.
And you can't be offended at that.
Sure.
So there's other reasons to get fired and whatnot, but that's a whole different story.
But yeah, the fact that it's just that you have something different than what someone else is needing.
Exactly.
It's not a personal issue.
Right.
And that's hard for anybody. I mean, I've been let go of things like that for those types of reasons, and it's hard not to get offended.
Of course.
It's hard not to.
Well,
Let's
because
just be honest. It's hard not to. But at the same time, you're correct. It's like, okay, what I have to offer is just not what they need.
Exactly.
It's not a personal issue. It's a professional thing that they're looking for a specific style or sound. And this person here, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I see this person. They are accomplishing that better than I can. I get it. Yeah, it stinks. I don't like it that, I can't pull off maybe what they're doing, because we think, oh, well, I'm a professional musician. I should be able to do anything that is necessary. And most of the time, most of us, we can pull off what is needed, but there's still those little nuances that people are looking for that you can't maybe always provide for them.
not at all. So, but it feels personal in the moment. It's really impactful when there's dollars attached to it and you're trying to feed your family. We spend years working on our craft, and if someone says, that's not what we're looking for, it does sting for sure. But I'm going to go back to my history. I was not the right fit to be the Belmont Big Band drummer.
Right.
But I had a purpose 4 years later that was extremely unique to me. And nobody has been able to fill that chair the way I can fill that chair. So, it's tough in the moment, but you got to just work to get over it.
Now, I want to jump ahead a little bit in the story, because with you being a part of Denver and the Mile High Orchestra, and for the audience listening, I'm going to put in the show notes a link to some of Denver's music.
Sure.
So that they can go listen to what the music is and hear you drumming and know what that music is about. But you guys got an opportunity to be on a show similar to like American Idol and The Voice, but it was for bands.
Right. It was produced by American Idol.
Yeah.
By Fremantle.
So talk about that a little bit, what that show was and what your experience was in that setting.
Sure.
And how you got it.
Yeah. Well, first off, any of those shows are very manufactured.
Right.
So if you're watching The Voice, if you're watching America's Got Talent, American Idol, know that it's reality TV, but it's scripted reality TV, right? So American Idol was in their first segment, their first time when they were on Fox, at the top of their game. They thought, well, let's do the same thing for bands. And Denver heard about it. And he's like, well, shoot, let's send in a video. We had some videos. And so we sent an audition video, and they chose us to come out and live audition.
Okay.
What we didn't know at the time was they had picked us. They had sort of pre-selected us to get all the way to the final 10 or 12 because they needed a certain amount of variety in the show. Now, as you know, with some of these, like American Idol especially, they can twist what you do to write their own story. They got to remember the season of American Idol or The Voice, they are writing a story for the whole season. The producers are. So you have to, it's uncomfortable because you're like, where are they going to fit us into the story? Are they going to make us foolish because we're this Christian big band, which, at its core can, if you say it the wrong way, it sounds pretty silly. So how are they going to twist this and whatnot? But I firmly believe and have it on good authority that they got us on that show. They put us on that show to be an American band that fills out the variety of the show, but they wanted us off quickly. They wanted us off quickly for two reasons. One, we weren't that cool. And two, we were really expensive because they're paying us to be there. Mm-hmm. I got a weekly stipend to be on that show. And then two, they paid for all of our food and lodging.
Now, how many people are in the band?
Well, I don't know, there's probably roughly 12 out there.
Okay, so 12 compared to 3 or 4 member band usually.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So we were expensive. Yeah. They wanted to just tip our hat to this American style, and then they wanted us off quick because we're expensive. Okay. So, but the problem is, when you have 12 people and in the band, you've got that much reach for voting power. So a band with 3 or 4 people, all their family and friends, is way smaller than a band with 12 people and all of our family and friends. So we ended up making it all the way to the finale. Because
to the top 3.
Yeah, the top 3, right. So because we were good enough, and we had a pretty wide reach. Now, for me, that was the time of my life because I learned really quickly out on the road with Denver doing promo stuff on TV that I loved TV. I loved playing on TV. I loved the pressure of TV. And that show, that really was live. It was not live to air. We taped on Wednesdays. It aired on Fridays. But you got one shot in front of the audience. And if you screwed up, they weren't coming back to say, well, let's give you another shot at that. It was live to tape, and you drop a stick, you screw it up, it's too bad. Yeah. And coming from the Christian world and doing a lot of Christian TV where you might have a shoot with 4 or 5 cameras, this was 13 cameras. And it was really exciting. And you're playing now, you're going live, playing live, that's going to air to several million people, a much different level of pressure. Yeah. And it was just awesome. I just loved every bit of it. And it was great.
So it's interesting that you're like, they really wanted to get you in and out pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand that you say it having 12 people in the band and just that it's being expensive. Put that aside and just focusing on the musical aspect of it. Now, you're a very humble person just by default, and you never make a big thing about yourself or what you do. So you're sitting here saying that, we were okay, we're good enough to get there, top 10 or whatever. No, I'm going to correct you because I've watched you for 19 years. You guys are phenomenal.
Thank you.
You truly are, and people need to go pull up YouTube and pull up Denver, the Mile High Orchestra, and watch some videos. Well, America's Next Great Band.
It was called Next Great American Band.
Next Great American Band. So that go on, look that on YouTube. I'll put a link in the show notes for it. Because I remember watching one. It may have been the finale. I remember one time they put the camera on you from in that side view, and you're a very animated drummer anyway, and so your hands are all over the place.
When I was younger, yeah.
And I remember you like looking at the camera, you're like doing this kind of thing. And I was like, dude, and it was so good, and I remember it was watching the judges because it's the lead. One of them's the lead guy from Goo Goo Dolls,
right? Johnny Resnick,
yeah. And I remember dude, they were impressed with you guys.
Yeah,
you guys are really good.
They would go back and forth, and you could tell it was scripted, because depending on. Okay, you want a little inside?
Yeah, I do, secret. Because this is what people. Because there's somebody listening like, I want to get on American Idol, I want to get on The Voice, I want to get on America's Got Talent, I want to get on some kind of show, because people are auditioning for these things all the time, thinking that this is how they're going to get their career started. And for some people, it's true. It is going to happen.
Absolutely.
I work with people right now that have been on those shows, and I'm out touring with and doing whatever. So for people that are listening that are like, I want to get, this is my way into the industry. This is how I launched my career, is through one of those things. What does that really look like?
Sure.
So yes, go
Well,
into
I
it.
mean, from our perspective, it was scripted. The comments that the judges were making were scripted to the point where there's a teleprompter showing them what to say.
Okay.
Now, what one particular week, and I couldn't tell you which one, but we remember just laughing about it afterwards. So we'd go into rehearsal, just our band, and we'd be writing, arranging, and rehearsing the arrangement that we came up with. And truthfully, Denver is the main arranger for our band. So he'd come up with the arrangement. We'd rehearse it on the first day of rehearsal, and they make us record it. The producers want us to record that rehearsal. So then the producers listen to it, and they start crafting the script. Well, we changed the arrangement between rehearsal 1 and rehearsal 2 because we didn't like it. So we can do this better. And the script that they wrote was based on the original arrangement that we did.
Interesting.
And so when Johnny Resnick is saying something about it's just not funky or it's too funky, I don't remember what it was, but we all just looked at each other and thought, you got to be nuts. What in the world is he talking about? It wasn't that at all.
Yeah.
But they had wrote the script off of our first rehearsal tape.
I see.
And then we changed it. And they never said you can't change the arrangement. They just said, be ready by Tuesday.
And we were ready.
Yeah, right. But it was pretty cool. Like, it's just thinking back to rehearsals, getting on a rabbit trail. For me, we were rehearsing up in Burbank. I want to call it Center Staging. It's a big rehearsal facility. And we're in one rehearsal room, and next to us is John Mayer rehearsing. And on the other side of us was the American Idol house band rehearsing. And then in another building was U2 rehearsing. So it just was like, have I arrived? Surely I have not arrived because I'm not, but it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And that was when Pino Palladino and Steve Jordan were playing with
John Mayer.
With John Mayer. So, you walk out of our rehearsal room and there's Steve Jordan's drum cases with all his name on it, out in the hallway.
Yeah.
And you're just like, man, this is the coolest thing ever,
This is what I've...
And then one week we were rehearsing and the American Idol house band invited our band to come hang with them in their rehearsal room and watch them. And we talked. And so I got to hang with Teddy Campbell, and it was really, really cool. Great experience.
That's cool. So what was it about doing live TV doing that show that made you fall in love with doing a live TV? Because you've done a lot of other stuff, getting to perform on live TV, and a lot of people that are listening want to do that. They want to get into playing music, whether it be on a TV show or being on American Idol, something like that, or being in a house band, possibly, or whatever it is, award shows or whatever. So what was it that made you kind of perk up when it came to doing TV?
I love the pressure of it.
Okay.
So, this was playing, we did 13, 15 episodes. But I've been the Dove Award house band drummer, been other award show house band drummers, been a house band drummer on a show on TBN for a real famous piano player. Did 30, 40 episodes with him. So there's something about television that is just, you got to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, there are certain shows that you might have a chance to recut something, but when you're having to sync cameras and sync audio and you have 100 people on the set that have to redo what they're doing because you screwed up, that's a whole different level of pressure than when you're in the studio and 5 people have to recut something.
Sure.
So I just love the pressure.
Yeah.
I really, really do.
Some people work great under pressure and some don't. So it's got to be something that you feed off of.
Yeah.
To do it well.
I like to. There's a speed and a pace that comes from that. I am not the guy that loves to just go hang in a recording studio and rehearse things and try things and get creative and, oh, what about this sound? And, oh, what about that sound? Let's move the mic here or there. And that's not me,
Yeah.
to
That's
just,
funny because you own a recording studio.
yeah. But if you see my studio, 5 spots of isolation, it's set up for a band to come in and play the song.
Right.
Now, I've been on sessions that, we just sit and get creative and try stuff. That's not really what I love to do. TV doesn't afford you the time. So you got to come in prepared, ready to go.
Yeah.
And there's just that pressure there. So that's what I like about TV. But we sort of skipped over, you were saying, some of your listeners might be trying to get on American Idol or The Voice or whatever.
Yep.
I have some tips. I have some thoughts that I want to share with you.
Please do.
And yes, it can be a career launcher.
Mm-hmm.
And that is fantastic. And I say go for it. But watch those shows carefully. From the start of a season to the end of the season, ask yourself, what story was the producers trying to craft? Because at this point, you're an actor and a performer that is performing and acting out their story that they are trying to tell. Okay? So it's really, really obvious with America's Got Talent that if you have a unique story, something that pulls on the heartstrings of the American people, you have a better chance of getting on the show. So it's a lesson. It's a lesson in craft your story. Figure out what your story is, craft it, tell it well, because that's what those shows want. And then they will infuse that into their bigger story that they're trying to tell. So I know several people who could sing circles around some of those performers, but they didn't craft a good story going in. In some cases, it was a non-story. In some cases, it was, well, I mean, I come from a wealthy family and I'm just a good performer. That's not a story that compels America, So really pay attention to what your story is and how it can be woven into the story that the producers are trying to tell through the season. Yeah. So that's really big.
Okay.
The other side of it is reality TV is about drama. So you have to remember that they may sort of craft some drama. They may keep you up really late or they may not provide. I've heard of this on, it was the X Factor. One of my buddies was on the X Factor, and he said that they specifically would hold you in a room with 30 other people and provide you with 10 bags of chips. So one, they were doing it on purpose because they were trying to create drama. You put hungry people, I don't want to say enslaved in a room, but, sort of locked in a room, so to speak. Well, we're waiting on setting the cameras, but it shouldn't take 6 hours to set cameras. So they had people locked. I use quotes here. You can't see it, but they had 30 people confined in a room with 10 bags of chips. So not enough food for everybody. And it's going to create drama. Mm-hmm. It's going to create fights, and they've got cameras in there to capture it. Think about that.
Yeah.
So could being on the X Factor launch your career? Sure. But you have to be willing to put up with whatever drama they are going to try to put you in. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just be careful.
That's interesting.
Be aware that you are stepping into the bigger story. My contract that I had to sign for Fremantle said that they can use my likeness in any way that they deemed appropriate for the show, regardless whether it was positive or negative.
Yeah.
So I had to be willing to go onto the show knowing that they may show me or craft me into their story that was not positive.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to put up with that. And then also know that at least, with the Fremantle contract,
Fremantle Media
Fremantle is American Idol, Fox.
Is the production company that puts those shows on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Fremantle contract was, and you're going to go through the show, and we now sign you exclusively to our record label, to our management company, for however long the contract was. I don't remember at the time. So Because the idea is we are not going to give you this platform in front of millions of people for you to capitalize on. It is for us to capitalize on. Us, Fremantle, us, our record label. We are investing that money, millions into it. So we are the ones that are going to get first crack at the money that could be generated from our investment in you. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. That's
just part of it.
That's part of it. That's being a record label. That doesn't mean that you're not going to profit off of it,
Yeah.
but they own it, and they should, because they're the ones that put up the money to do it.
Sure.
So anyway, just know that stuff going in, but by all means, go for it. You want to go sing on American Idol and that sounds fun to you, do it.
Yeah.
Have at it.
Because it does launch careers.
Yeah.
And whether you end up being Carrie Underwood or Kelly Clarkson, some people are going to get that exposure and reach that height in their career. The majority of people won't, but it doesn't mean that you can't be successful coming out of it and building a career for yourself. And I know plenty of people that have done it.
Right.
I'm actually working with a guy right now that was on American Idol, and I'm out touring with him and playing for him some. And
Yeah.
Phenomenal singer and artist, and had his moment, quote unquote, and had his story.
Yeah.
And it's a great story, and he's been able to use that to encourage people all around the country and go in and speak, and his name is Dave Pittman.
Yeah.
And he has Tourette's syndrome. And I remember watching him on the show when it came in. It's like 9 or 10 years ago, I think, when he was on at the time. And because he has Tourette's, that was his story.
Right.
And it tugs on the heartstrings, and he was able to use that afterwards. I think he made it to Hollywood at some point in Hollywood, got cut. But because of that, he was able to build a career and go in and speak in a lot of places and sing and share his story, and then encourage people. And a lot of people that grow up being bullied, and because of whether they've got a condition like that or for whatever reason, no matter what, if you're being bullied for whatever reason, he's able to go in and encourage students in school, high schools and middle schools and things like that. And then share his music, and then share the gospel, because he does Christian music now. And so, and it's been fun to get to work with him and learn his story and be a part of that, because he's still doing that, 9, 10 years later.
Yeah.
But that helped launch him was because of that. So.
Yeah. So there's another little golden nugget for all you listeners. Just because you think this is to your detriment, like Tourette's, he actually turned that into his advantage.
Sure.
What was his disadvantage, he used it to use for his advantage.
Yeah.
And we all have that.
Everybody's got something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your disadvantage, and how can you turn it around and use it for something positive and encourage other people?
Yeah.
Especially as a musician, because people look up to people that are musicians and are artists. People that are in entertainment, for whatever reason, people in the entertainment industry are lifted up higher than others. Who knows? Like we all do it.
Sure.
We all lift because it's something that not everybody can do, I guess. And music is universal language for people, and so people connect with that. And so for those of us that get to do this for a living on some level or on any level, you get to use your platform to encourage people and lift people up. That goes a long way.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
That's cool. I did not expect to have that conversation today.
No, that's what's
and
awesome
I love
about
it.
doing this.
Yeah, but that's really good, because, like we said, a lot of people want to get into it. So that's cool to know some of the highs and lows that are associated with working in reality TV and music.
Yeah, you can't. You are being used for their art, not for you to show off your uniqueness necessarily. So it
is what it is.
It is what it is. Go in with eyes wide open.
So, okay, I want to back up a little bit, because you're saying that you've played drums in house bands for different TV shows, award shows, and things like that. So I know we were talking about earlier that everything stems back to Belmont being, as far as your tree that you call it, of connections. So how did you end up getting into playing in house bands on live TV award shows and things like that?
Sure. Well, some of that was because by the nature of Denver and the Mile High Orchestra, the type of band it is, the type of musicians that are in that band, that band lent itself to being a house band.
Okay.
On various shows. So whether or not it was specifically, and here's Denver and the Mile High Orchestra off to the side of the stage being the house band, if it wasn't necessarily that name,
Right.
but it was basically that band.
Right.
So a television producer would see Denver and the Mile High Orchestra out doing what we do, or on the Fox show or whatever, and they'd say, well, wait a minute, you guys would be a great house band. Here, come work on my TV show and do that. So that's how the Dove Awards thing happened, some of the TBN shows. And then once you get into that world, then you kind of continue to get hired for other such types of shows. You know, there was a Christian version of American Idol that came out. I was the house band drummer for that. Then when the TV show Nashville came through town and they were filming here, you know, you get called for that kind of stuff, and that's a whole different thing.
Okay, so let's stop. I want to talk about that because people that listen to this show know that I've been on Nashville.
Right.
The reason that I got into Nashville, I get to be on that show, is because of you.
Sure.
Because you got to be on that show. So how did you get called or connected with Sherry Cunningham to be on that show? 'Cause
Right.
she's the one who brought us in.
Right. So again, it stems from the tree. So I'm out with Denver and the Mile High Orchestra playing on Fox out in LA.
Okay.
And there were other bands out there that were from Nashville. And Sherry knew some of those other people
That were on the show
that
with
were
you.
on that same show with us.
Right.
And I stayed
Oh,
friends.
Six Wire.
Yeah, Six Wire. So Six Wire's on that show. And when Nashville, the TV show, started producing here in town, they called Six Wire because they were the right look for a particular band on that on the show. So I knew those guys, and Sherry was telling those guys, "Hey, we need other musicians for other bands and whatnot." And so they said, "Well, here's a drummer called Jared," you know, and I was the right look and the right thing for whatever Sherry needed for that moment. And then because she just kind of was starting to spread the word, I said, "Well, if you need a guitar player or multi-instrument guy with red hair, call Marty," you know.
Right.
So then you got called for some of that stuff. So, and playing on that type of TV is very different because you are actually an actor.
Right. So
And-
what we were doing, we were in the backing bands, the backup bands for the artists, for the actors on the show that were quote unquote artists.
Right.
So, and they would have a band that was playing for them. We were the band playing behind those actors.
Correct.
What we're
Correct.
doing.
But we were just acting. And I made the mistake. The first time I showed up on set, I went to check in with the
Extras?
extras. I went to the extra check-in table.
Oh,
And they look at me and they're like, "Well, you're not on the list. I'm supposed to be playing in one of the bands. You're not an extra. You're an actor. Get over to the trailers," you know, whatever.
Yeah.
In their very LA way of
Yeah.
chastising you. So, but the point is you're an actor. I didn't play on those sessions in the recording session but I have to act as if I am the drummer playing that on the stage.
Okay,
So,
now explain how that works because we're playing to music that's already recorded.
correct.
So explain how that's working and then what you're having to do.
Yeah.
in your
So
position.
these songs that you hear on the show Nashville, they're recorded in a studio
Beforehand.
with session players and whatever. Then we get the tracks a day or two, really
24
a day.
hours.
Not
at the
even
most.
24 hours.
At
man.
the most.
Yeah, at the most. 9 o'clock at
I
night.
have to emphasize at the most.
Yeah, 9 o'clock at night. You're supposed to be on set by 5 a.m. with the songs memorized. You know, so you don't get much time, and that's part of the gig. Like you can't complain about that.
Yep.
And Sherry, she knows who can handle it and who can't.
Yep.
So anyway, so you got to learn and copy exactly what they are doing on that recording. Because if I'm hitting a cymbal and there's no cymbal on the track, well, visually it doesn't line up and it doesn't work, and eventually I'll never get called again. So you really do have to know and learn and memorize exactly what they're playing. And on that show, because it was so music heavy, they really cared about making sure it looked right.
Right.
So they had a music director on set that's watching the whole time.
Colin?
Yeah, coming up to you saying, "Hey, Are you sure that that's the part? Because it doesn't look like what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And, you really had to dive in and be really careful.
Yeah.
I loved doing those, and I will always do them when Sherry calls, and she's called for some other stuff for Lifetime movies and whatever that's been doing. And that's great. But that is not where I'm at my best. I'm not at my best copying what someone else does. I'm at my best when I can bring my uniqueness to the table. But here again, I want to feed my family.
Yeah. And
So-
it pays well. It pays great because
Yeah, it pays fine.
it's paying like a session.
Yeah, I mean it's
Like
it's on the
actual-
card.
yeah,
It's on the union card. So so you get paid appropriately, and then of course because it's union, it's being tracked. So however many times that thing airs beyond what your original contract was for, you get paid.
Mailbox money.
Yeah.
Every year, once a year, you'll get
Right.
like
So
royalties, quote unquote.
yeah, once a year I get I always forget when it's going to happen, so it's this surprise
Yeah.
mailbox money, and you think, great, this is awesome. I'm going to go take my wife out to dinner.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
not tons, but it's always something. And so, and I want people to know that are listening. It's like, okay, if you're, you get opportunities to play on a TV show as a musician, whether you're acting or whether you're doing a live band as in a house band or whatever. Every time those things air, you're going to get residual royalties or something. You get residual money at some point for that every time it gets aired
Yeah.
on TV.
With the caveat, provided that that show is done through the union.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Because
The
it's
musicians union.
Yeah, the musicians union, because that's who tracks. That's who keeps track of it.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, if a television production company cannot pay you,
Right.
extra money every time a rerun happens, they would, I'm sure, be happy to not pay you. So they have agreements with the unions, and the union helps track that, so that way you can get your extra payments. Now, for instance, the show on Fox. This is nothing against Fremantle, and it's nothing against Fox, but that was not done on the union card. So, for all I know,
The American Band Show?
yeah. So for all I know, those shows have re-aired in, Mozambique or some random country in Africa, and I would never know. So I'm never going to get a residual payment. So same thing, like, if any of that stuff airs on YouTube and generates income, I should, in theory, get my portion of that. But
Right.
there's no way to track that because it was not done through the union. So point being, not every television show is going to run their stuff through the union.
Mm-hmm.
So don't just show up on set of somewhere and someone pays you some cash afterwards and you think you're going to get mailbox money.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's initial. You're getting paid up front for the actual job you're doing. Chances are you may not get anything beyond that.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It just depends
Yeah,
on if it's going through the
unless
union.
the contract was negotiated through the
Yeah.
union. So
That's good. That's good stuff. Man, you're just a well that's just full of knowledge. I love
I
it.
just hit stuff and
Man, you've been in so many different things, parts of the business throughout your career,
yeah.
that have allowed you to gain all this knowledge, and experience. So now I remember back in 2004-ish, I want to say.
When I was 5 years old.
Right. And I was 6.
Yeah.
So we were out on tour playing for another artist, and we were in the vehicle, whatever that thing was. And I remember you looked over at me and you said, I think I want to start a recording studio in my house. Now, that was a fairly new concept, even at that time, for here in Nashville. People were just kind of getting into that, I think. It was kind of starting to change quite a bit, around town, but it was still fairly new, not like it is today. Everybody's got, their bedroom's got their own studio.
We have studios in our pockets. If you have an iPhone.
That's true.
If you have an iPhone.
You've got a recording studio.
Yeah.
But I remember you said that you looked at me in the vehicle, and you looked over and you're like, I think I'm going to start my own studio in my house, in my basement. I was like, that's cool. Okay. And because I was thinking, I'm going to record an album soon, and I need a place to record.
Sure.
And you're my friend. Can you give me a discount?
Right.
So, what made you decide to start a recording studio? Because now that studio is gone. You're in a different house now, and so that where we are now is the recording studio that you built a few years ago, and this place is phenomenal. I love it. But what made you decide to do that, and what is the process of going through? Because this is not just a studio in your bedroom. This is like a full-fledged recording studio. You got grand piano in a room, you got drum kit in another room, you got a control room, you got vocal booths, you got like an entire studio built in the basement of your house.
Sure.
So what possessed you to do that? And how has that...
Some demon possesses me to do something stupid.
No, it's not stupid. It's amazing. I wish I had this. But to go to the extent that you have done to create a full-fledged recording studio in your home, and then and to build your career as part of what you do now as a studio owner and an engineer, out of here. And what does that look like, and how have you built your business doing that? Because a lot of people want to do that, but trying to figure out how to really make that work.
Sure. The main thing, well, there's several main things. To start with, for anyone that wants to do this, first and foremost, it does not come overnight. Mm-hmm. This is, in our microwave society, get everything you want instantly. This does not happen overnight. And in 2004, I suppose that's when I said it, I knew that tours come and tours go. Someone might be touring 30 dates, and that's a great paycheck for 30 dates, but then you might have a month off.
It was 2002.
Okay, 2002.
I got it back. It's in my head. I'm seeing it in my head now. I had to back it up.
Great. Whenever it was, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I think there's an opportunity to make a recording studio. Yeah. Why not? So youthful ignorance, youthful ambition, I should say. So first off, it doesn't happen overnight. Okay. And you start with what you can afford. And if that's a laptop computer, and a 2-channel little interface, you start there. Mm-hmm. And you just start making music. The beautiful thing about it is it's all about just making music. Take the tools that you can get your hands on. Don't go into a whole bunches of debt to buy the fanciest blah blah blah. Just start making music. You have an iPhone in your pocket that has GarageBand on it. Make music. And at the core of what I wanted, and what I really am passionate about, is just setting up the opportunities to create music. So, I went, and in my off time, I worked for Home Depot because I wanted to get lumber cheaper to build a wall in my basement of that house. It didn't last long. I was not good at Home Depot, but I got the lumber I needed to build a wall. So I built a wall. And then the next month I saved up and was able to buy some other part of the process. And it was just this little 2-room, I call it a little recording studio, a little cave down in the basement of my house. I loved being able to create music. My production style is not slice, dice, cut up, programming, Katy Perry kind of records. I really enjoy grabbing musicians and capturing their performance. That's what I really enjoy. But along that time, I became dear friends with a Berkeley grad who was a producer and was producing some records that I was playing on. And he came to me and he said, man, we could make a company out of this. We could do this and become a production company. So he and I started a little recording outfit called Advantage Music Production. Mm-hmm. And we handle all aspects of the recording process. We take some clients, they want us to take them from zero all the way to finished product. Some clients are just like, hey, can you mix this? Some clients are I just want arrangements. Fine. So any part of the process we do. And I realized that we could do it effectively at my little cave of a recording studio.
Yeah.
And then over time, just realized, okay, we outgrew that space. We outgrew that house. And my family moved to a different particular house that just had so much more space that I could build out. And using money from the first go around and saving, we were able to put it into the second one. It's not a massive money maker. Too many people in Nashville in particular that we all have recording studios in our houses. I could think of 5 in this neighborhood that we're sitting in right now. In my neighborhood, which is just your standard run-of-the-mill Nashville neighborhood with maybe 100 or 200 houses in it, there's at least 5 that I know of. One's on my street.
Yeah.
So because of all of that, it's a pro and a con. The pro is, look at how easy it is to make more music. And at the heart of who I am, that's what I love. The con is that you don't make a ton of money at it because there's a bunch of us doing it.
Right.
And so it's really I'm not losing money, certainly. I am making some money, but it's not like it's the end all be all to feed my family. But it is the end all be all for my passion for creating an environment where people can make music.
Yeah. It's also, one of the main things about the show is that it's to encourage people that are doing multiple things to make a living in music. So owning a recording studio is not the only thing that allows you to make money. It provides a portion of your income.
Yeah.
It's not all of your income, obviously.
Correct.
Because you got the recording studio, so you got clients coming in that you're getting to record them or produce an album or a song or whatever it is. You got all these different aspects of what you can do with that as a production company with Advantage Music Production. And then the recording studio, 745 studio.
745 recording, yeah. The production company rents studio space from me.
Right.
And we don't, as a production company, we don't use my studio exclusively.
Right.
We have other spots that we go to. Sometimes I'm booked here and my company can't rent space here,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a weird, I have 2 separate businesses, the recording studio and the production company.
Right.
One rents space out of the other.
Yeah. But then you have to be a drummer.
Yeah.
And you're going out either doing session work because you're doing lots of albums that you record on, or you're out playing live for different artists. So you're kind of the epitome of doing multiple things that allow you to make a living in music, like I do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to encourage people with. It's even for the people that do this full time that are having great success, it's still having to do more than 1 or 2 or 3 things to be able to make a living, to be able to pay the bills and support your family. And that's what it comes down to. That's what we're trying to do, is support a family. For you and me, because we have families. We have, we're married and we have kids. So my view of success in music is, can I pay the bills to provide for my family and get to do music full time? That's, for me, that is success. That's not always the case for everybody. Everybody's going to look at it a little differently. But I think for you and I think that's the goal.
Oh,
and I think that's for the majority of people.
Yeah, without a doubt. What is it to be a professional or semi-professional versus amateur? Amateur, we do it for fun. Semi-professional, we do it part-time and have a good time with it. Being a pro is, for the most part, you don't have to take on other work outside of music. Now, so it's something to hang your hat on. However, Marty, there's a source of pride. And pride can be good and pride can be bad. I have a dear friend of mine right now. He's having a hard time paying his bills being a musician. And he is very seasoned and has done very well for himself as a musician. And for whatever reason, the story is not what has happened to him or what choices he's made, but the story is he's struggling to earn a living now, and he's struggling with his pride to go get another job outside of music or outside of being a performer.
Yeah.
And that's holding him back. There's nothing wrong with, for a period of time, to do something different.
Sure.
Or to branch out and go work a side job just, so you can pay your bills. Mm-hmm. I know let me say this, because the name of this podcast is You Can Make a Living in the Music Industry. It is not you must make a living in the music industry. Sure, and that's a fair point.
I want to make sure to say that, because for all the episodes that I've done so far, and the point of the podcast is to encourage people that you can do this. It's not wrong to not do this, obviously. Like, I want surely people know that, but I just want to make it clear.
Well, right, and the point of this podcast is great, and it's part of the reason why I wanted to be on it. Because it is true that you can make a living doing music, but you can't be so prideful that if for a season you got to go mow lawns.
Of course.
For me to get started, I was working at Home Depot. I was doing temp jobs, working at a temp agency, And then I worked for a landscaper. So the time that you and I met, I was working for a great landscaper who was very generous to me to say, tell me every week, tell me what the next week is going to look like. Are you going to be on the road or are you going to be working for me?
Mm-hmm.
And all he had to do was so he could plan appropriately.
Sure.
And without that landscaping job, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
So it's not like you go to school or you show up in Nashville and you instantly get a job, or you instantly get a job playing music, and you might be having to do some temp jobs and some.
Or it's part-time. Yeah, it's part-time music for a while. And people know this by now that I delivered pizzas for years.
Right.
Like 6 years when I first moved to town, I was delivering pizzas when I was in town, and then I was out touring, getting to go out and be on the road beyond that. But whenever I came back, I had to have a job.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't getting in-town work at the time. And that's stuff that it's a slow build.
Right.
Some people jump straight into it and are successful right off the bat. And I've had plenty of people on the show that have done that.
Oh yeah.
But then I would say the vast majority of us, that's not the way that it works.
Right.
You have to work your way up to that.
Oh yeah.
And then once you get there, then you're off and running to be full-time music. But even when like you're saying with your friend, and even you right now, you're not even doing it completely full-time. You're doing some outside stuff.
Right. But part of it is I want to and am making a shift, not completely away from music. I love playing music, but I'm adding to my career being a professional speaker and presenter.
Right.
So I get hired by various organizations to go speak on their behalf. And I love that. It's accessing a skill set that I've never that being a musician, I've never taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. So that's just something else that I enjoy doing and, adding to what I do every day.
Sure. Yeah.
But in fairness though, and maybe this sounds prideful, but in fairness, it wasn't because I wasn't making it as a musician. I totally was making it as a musician. Some of it, I kind of got a little bored out on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, but that's 20 years out on the road with a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
Some dear friends, but some of it just, okay, I've seen all these towns. Now, honestly, for me, Marty, yes, it's a paycheck. It's not really even about the music anymore. It's about an experience. So, 20 years into it, a theater is a theater is a theater. I've played over 1,000 churches. Every church, I've seen every type of church out there. I've seen every type of theater out there. And I've been to multiple countries now. So for me, am I going out with great friends? I want to hang with my friends. And is it going to be a great experience? Mm-hmm. Am I seeing something new? Mm-hmm. Are we going to a new country that I've not seen before? Are we going to a new city that I've not seen before? And I don't hole up in a hotel room when I'm at that city. Even if it's some small town in Kansas, I will get out. Where's the town square? Where's the used bookstore? Mm-hmm. Where's the best coffee shop? And I walk to it or go to it because I just want an experience. So that's kind of getting off the beaten path. But point being, I want some new experiences, and being a professional speaker and presenter is part of that.
Yeah.
So
I want to back up a little bit and talk about, because when you first started Advantage Music Production and you started the recording studio in the basement of your first house, you started a record label.
Yes, called Real Loud Records.
So I want to get your opinion on what that's like. Like, what is it like? Why did you start a record label? It's an independent record label. Mm-hmm. Why would you start a label, and what does it look like to do that? Because most people are out as independent artists and they're just out on their own, or they're wanting to get signed to a major label.
Yeah.
And even to an independent label nowadays, because a lot of indie labels are big labels that people know, Big Machine Records.
Sure.
That Taylor Swift was originally on, and half the country market is now a part of, is technically an independent label.
Oh yeah.
Even though they're huge now.
Sure.
So there's tons of those out there, but why did you do that?
Okay. Well, this is rewinding history a little bit. And so the chronological order was Jared goes to college. Jared starts playing with Denver, the Mile High Orchestra. Jared starts a record label. Jared then starts a production company.
Oh,
So
sorry,
that
I was backwards.
no, that's okay. So we have to get the order right because the story will make more sense. And ultimately, all of it comes down to why did I do all those things? Because Jared wanted an opportunity to play drums.
Yep.
Okay, so what happened was Denver and the Mile High Orchestra were signed to an independent label. The distribution company that was distributing CDs, friends, they were distributing CDs because that's what the medium was at the time. That distribution company sold a bunch of their records, but went bankrupt with all the money. So now Denver didn't have any money to do another record. So who comes along but Jared's dad? Good old dad.
Who was promoting concerts for free back in the day.
Yeah, who's promoting concerts and, was a roofing contractor and whatever. So he kind of understood a little bit about the business, a little. And he comes to me and he says, well, Jared, I could loan Denver some money and do a record. What? I'm like, fine. You want to loan him some money and do a record? Fine. So he does. But the problem is my dad tells Denver, but make the best record you can. You don't ever tell an artist that. That means the record will never be done and it will go way over budget. So that's what happened. So now what was we went 100 times over the budget that we originally set because we're trying to make the best record we possibly could.
Right.
Big mistake. So now my dad comes to me and he's like, well, Jared, maybe I need to put some money into promotion so I get my money back. I said, well, that's kind of a record label, Dad. He's like, well, you want to start one? Now remember, my dad's a roofing contractor. Mm-hmm. I'm just a lowly little drummer. And with my Music Business 101 class that I took for one semester at Belmont, I was answering his questions. And he's like, well, you want to start a record label? And I thought, well, if I don't start a record label, I'm going to lose my job with this band. The only music job that I have right now. So it was a means to an end.
Okay.
But we signed Denver to it. And I will say very proudly, by years 4 and 5, we were generating over 7 figures of revenue.
Really?
Total combined. Their tours, their record sales, everything, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Ask me how much money the record label actually made.
How much money did the record label actually make?
It was completely break even. In order to get to that 7 figures of revenue, we had to spend that much money in order to get it.
Wow.
So, if I had kept with it, if I had kept going at it, another 5-10 years, because that was at the 5-year mark, we probably would have figured out how to really do it and make it make sense. But we were just kind of throwing darts at a dartboard learning, and to be break even at 5 years, I'd say not bad. But it was at that mark, at that point, that's when Denver and the Mile High Orchestra went on the Fremantle show out on Fox, and we had to release them from any contractual obligations in order for them to be on that show. So that was a great line in the sand. Like, you guys go on the show with our blessing. We're going to release you from all contractual obligations, and good luck. Now, I'm a drummer on that too, so I have some invested interest in letting them go.
Right.
But it was at that point that the producer that I had been hiring to produce Denver's records, he came to me and said, man, we have a great working relationship. Maybe let's start a production company instead.
Gotcha. And that's where Advantage
Music Production came in. So I ran that record label for 5 years. Call it success because we didn't lose money.
Yeah.
And we had 3 artists at our peak. And, it was fun. But it was a different time. It was almost the exact wrong time to be in the record label business. Because the early 2000s, where we started 2002, I think it was, MP3s were just coming into prominence. Mm-hmm. So therefore CD sales were just starting to dip off, but you still had to manufacture and make, like physically produce a plastic CD, So you still had to make those, but they're not selling as well. You have MP3s circling around, and then iTunes comes in right around that time. And so that's still very new. and how do you really make any money on iTunes? And it was so new that we were having to live in an old school production mode and selling mode without really knowing how to use the new school models. Here's a little fact for you, if you'd like. So we had Denver and the Mile High Orchestra were on that show on Fox, playing in front of millions of people, I think 15 times. And the majority of that was over the month of December, November and December. Would you like to know how much our little record label made off iTunes sales from all that exposure?
Please tell me.
$4,000.
Okay.
So it tells you, okay, just because you have tons of exposure on television doesn't mean that you are going to make millions on just from iTunes downloads.
Right.
It's not possible. So
and it's even less now with Spotify and places like that because there are fractions of pennies that you get per download. Or
yeah, you got to have 400,000 streams get you.
I think a million streams on Spotify is like $3,000. I think that's
it's
roughly is now.
The point is, you can't. I can produce a song for $3,000.
Right.
That's about what it would cost for my company to produce a song, between $1,500 and $3,000. So you got to think, can I get a million streams to cover that cost? No, probably not. But with downloads, with YouTube streams, with tour, can you get it? Yeah, absolutely. So from a record label standpoint now, it's very different. And right as we were coming out of my time doing record labels was when we called 360 deals, where a record label would say, we are going to take a piece of everything you do. And boy, artists just screamed about it. How dare you take some of my touring money? How dare you take some of my streaming money? No, it's because the only way to make it now is you have to tour, you have to do Spotify streams, you have to do YouTube streams, you have to do iTunes downloads, you have to do all of this. And so for a record label to make any money to then be able to reinvest in your career and pay their paychecks because they're working for you, they have to take a piece of everything. So I've been out of it. I've been out of the record label side of it for quite a long time. I could be talking about obsolete stuff at this point, but
well, I don't think it's. I mean, I think it's a reality that people need to be aware of. That for independent labels at least, big major labels, it's probably going to work a little different on some levels, but it's still a reality that people have to go through. It's all a gamble.
Yeah.
No matter what, this industry is a gamble.
Oh, well, sure.
It's all risk. You're hoping for the best. And you're working, and I talk about all the time. It's relationship based. Everything that you do, for the most part, is based on networking and relationships that you've built with people over the years that allow you to do things that, you started a label. Denver got signed to Real Loud Records because your dad said, "Hey, Jared, let's start a record label." They needed money. They got signed to your label, and you guys had 5 good years doing that, and then got released to be able to go do the show. And, it's all stepping stones to different things.
Yep.
What would you say, just kind of closing out, what would be some advice that you would give people that are wanting to get into this crazy world?
Well,
either as a musician or somebody who wants to start a studio, because you're an engineer and you're a producer, and there's still tons of stuff we hadn't even talked about, but just in general, what's some advice, some things to do, some things not to do, trying to get into the music industry?
Let's talk about it from a couple different angles. For the person that wants to be a professional playing their instrument,
right?
Okay, seek after your uniqueness. I think we talked about that. You really do have to practice your butt off. And making sure that you are as good as you possibly can be for that moment. Now, over the course of your life, you are going to get better based on your experiences. You might get worse if you stop playing for a little while, But the point is, if you're young, get really great at your instrument and really great at what makes you unique. And go about the business of finding a group of people that you mesh well with. So just sitting in your basement practicing your saxophone, no one is driving by hearing you play in your practice space going, man, I got to hire him for the next Beyonce tour. Doesn't work that way. You get jobs by running in a circle of people that are your friends. So
that are already doing it.
that are already doing it. And you use your friends, and I don't say that as a bad thing, but you use your friends to help bring you to the jobs that they're doing. And then when you get a job, you call your friends. Here's a story for you.
Okay.
I was in college and Dan Huff was coming to give a special lecture.
Dan Huff being a huge producer.
Big time producer, Faith Hill, played on Michael Jackson records, whatever. So I, being a senior, I'm in the back of the auditorium and I raised my hand during Q&A. I said, Mr. Huff, I'm a great drummer. What can I do to convince you to ever use me on one of your sessions?
Okay.
And people in the room knew me because I was a senior. They all turned back at me and give me these looks of, how dare you ask such a pompous and arrogant question? But Dan got it. He understood what I was asking.
Yeah.
I was really proud of and appreciate. He understood. I wasn't trying to tell him I'm a great drummer.
Right.
I'm just trying to say I could handle one of your sessions. What could I ever do to convince you to call me instead of Vinny Caluta or whoever you call?
Sure.
And he said, Jared, there's nothing you could ever do. I will never call you for a session. Likely. Because I don't know you. We're not friends. The drummer that I call, we are friends. We are in Sunday school together. My wife and his wife they do play dates together with our kids. Mm-hmm. So I think the advice that I'm trying to give someone young, trying to break in, is align yourself with a group of friends. And it is your friends sticking with your peer group as your peer group moves throughout various gigs up the ladder of the music industry.
Right.
That is what will help grow your career. And then when your friends move, you move with them. And when they move, when you move, you bring them with you. It's all this lifting up of everybody within your friend group.
Yeah. And I'll say that just to kind of go back up a little bit when we're talking about doing the show Nashville, and you and I, we've walked up this industry together, and you've played on my albums, and we've done multiple different things together. You've toured together with other artists. You've gone on the road, played for me. I've come in and done some stuff with you. And when it came to the show Nashville, I wanted to get on that show because I love doing music, but I also love acting. I did some acting stuff, a couple of different shows back in the day. Like extra work or whatever, but I always loved that just entertainment industry in general, and always wanted to, if I didn't do music, then I was either going to be a director or an actor. Those are the things I wanted to do. And so when Nashville came to Nashville, I wanted to get on that show, and I wanted to play in some of the bands. And I found out that you had done the show for like the first 4 seasons. You'd been on it. And so I was over here with you doing something one day, and you mentioned it, and I was like, man, I really want to be on that show. Like, that's something that I want to do and accomplish. I've never done it to that extent before, and I really want to be in that. And I was like, what do I need to do? And you're like, well, I just need to call Sherry Cunningham and tell her that you'd be interested, and get your, I just need your headshot or whatever, and I'll email it to her. And so that's what we did,
Right.
And then she literally called me the next day. Hey, Jared told me about you. I need you to come in and play on the show next week. I was like, yes, thank you so much. So thank you to her, and thank you to you for opening an opportunity for me that I wouldn't have known how to get into otherwise.
Right.
Because you can't just call up and say, hey, I want to be on the show. That doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah. So, but that's to my point. Like, we are in our same
We're
friend
in the circle,
group,
yeah.
Same circle, and hey, you've got a record, or you've brought me certain work, for production and whatnot, and renting the studio. And it wasn't my way of saying thank you. It was my way of, hey, we're all raising each other's boats.
Sure.
We're in the same friend group. I want you to be successful.
And I want you to be successful.
Exactly. So that's how that works. So it's the super long answer to, if I have one piece of advice, it's stick with your peer group, be friends, and help each other out.
Yeah.
So that's really, if I can hang my hat on any one thing, that's what I would tell people to do. Yes, you have to be good. Mm-hmm. At least a baseline level of good. Mm-hmm. There's always someone better. There's always a better musician out there.
Yeah, and just like we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, with Belmont and, Nashville being an ocean full of musicians, and we're small fish in this huge pond of people that are amazing at what they do.
Yeah.
But, and I've talked about this a lot with other people, is you got to be able to get along with people. You have to be fun to hang out with, and to have that circle of peers to be with that you can work with and just be around.
Yeah.
If you're a jerk, nobody wants to be around you.
Sure.
And wants to work with you.
I'm gonna add something to what you're saying. Fun to be around. For some people can conjure up this image of life of the party.
Right.
And I'm not the life of the party by any stretch. I'm not a walk in the room and I'm making jokes and the whole thing.
Enjoyable to be with, though.
But at least for the most part, but I'm working with my friends. Mm-hmm. My friends and I have affinity. My personality works with other people's personality in the room. And so therefore it all just works. Mm-hmm. So yes, being a jerk, I do know some jerks that still get work, but it happens to work with the other personalities in the room. They tolerate it because maybe he's really good, or they tolerate it because maybe they just know the guy. That's just Joe being Joe,
right?
And it doesn't ruffle their feathers. So your personality is unique to you. It's your fingerprint. Your musicianship, your art is unique to you. It's your fingerprint. Find other people that your fingerprints and your uniqueness works with, both personality and your art, and it just goes together. It's great.
Yeah.
And don't be mad when Carrie Underwood doesn't call.
Yeah.
Because just saw someone from my hometown the other day, and they said, "Why aren't you playing for Carrie Underwood?" I'm like, okay, I understand that question. I understand where it comes from, but I don't play for Carrie Underwood because Carrie Underwood really likes her drummer.
Yeah.
His fingerprints, his personality works with her band. Mm-hmm. That's why I don't play with her. And so, and Garrett, that's good for him. That's great. And he's awesome at it. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad for him.
Yeah.
But don't make me feel bad because Carrie Underwood only has one drummer and likes him.
Yeah, sure.
But that's just someone not understanding how it works.
Just not knowing how the industry works around. Yeah. Well, dude, man, we could sit and talk for another 2 hours easily.
I know, but that would just bore everybody.
I don't think so. It's fascinating. Like this is great stuff. It's great information, and but eventually we got to bring it to. There's so much that we have not even covered. So we'll have to have you back at some point. And so anyway, well, thank you for your time. Thanks for letting me come hang out with you, and thank you for your friendship for pushing 20 years, and it's awesome. And we'll continue to lift each other's boats up and go up in the industry, and hopefully we'll still be doing this when we're 70, 80 years old. And
I hope so.
See what happens.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm so excited and so honored that you spent your time with us, getting to know Jared and his story better, and learning from him and all of his expertise within the music industry. I hope you take what we talked about and apply it to your career in the ways that best fit what you're trying to do in the music industry. Remember, Edenbrook Productions is here to help. If you need consulting services via phone call, Skype, or FaceTime, be sure to let us know how we can help you begin to make a living in the music industry.